One of the things about learning objects is they're meant to be reusable. They're actually designed to be reusable. So this is actually a learning object for programming. It's one of the earliest ones. And as you can see, it sits in its own window against, which is a virtual learning environment. It's actually WebCT in the background, which Blackboard took over. So you can actually reuse it. And it's actually, you can see it's a separate little context. The bit at the back is mainly text-based description of the programming. And then you get this little multimedia learning object. And one of the things about making them small and reusable is when mobile phones come along, you can actually port them on the mobile phones. So because they were specifically designed to be reusable, they've got that degree of flexibility. Okay. So how did teachers go about developing these? Because obviously in multimedia terms, some of them are quite sophisticated. The way we did it was we used what we called an agile development process. And an agile development process means getting small groups which are empowered to do things. And in those groups, crucially, you have the teachers, the tutors. And usually we had learners as well. And we had a multimedia developer. And what they would do is, here, for example, as you can see, they're very creatively sketching out their ideas. And it tends to get quite creative, so people come up with quite messy initially as they're thinking out their ideas. And then when they've worked out their basic ideas in the workshop, we went into this iterative prototyping. The multimedia developer would develop a prototype, say to the tutor, is that what you want? The tutor would say, not quite. You know, you've got it right here, but I want that changed. So the tutor actually shaped the development. And all of these were then used extensively with students. So we used that sort of agile approach. And one example is a particular learning object, and I'm going to sort of follow the story of this one through. This was a group from humanities, and what they wanted was a learning object which would get across the idea of different perspectives, that there isn't a true version, that in the humanities, different people may have different perspectives and things, and you have to appreciate those. And the student has to begin to think in this way. And they sketched it up, and this is what they gave us. And they gave us this in the middle, so this is meant to be an artifact. It could be anything. In their case, they were interested in a particular altar from ancient Greece. And they've drawn these little pictures here which are showing different people commenting on it. Okay. And if I follow it through, we talked to them, and I did this in PowerPoint and said to them, look, I think this is what you want. I think what you want is a picture of some sort of artifact. Here I've used our graduate school. You've got different questions like the origin, the purpose, the meaning, and you want different experts. So you want a student to click an origin, ask the art historian, and then compare it with a classicist or compare it with a modern historian. So the student can look at them. And as you can see, you've got quite a rich little pattern here. And that initially was just a mock-up because I wanted to talk through with them, and they said, yeah, that fits what we want. And what they then did was develop a full working learning object. That's not the end of the story, because one of the interesting things about this was it looked like a really interesting pattern which could be used over and over again. But not many people were going to be interested in the altar of Pergamon, which is what they did it in initially. So we've got a learning object which is only interesting for a small number of people. So how do we move beyond that? And that led us through to developing authoring tools. And these authoring tools are free. Again, they fit in with OER. There were three things that led to the development of this. One was productivity. This system worked very well, but we needed multimedia developers in each group, and we simply didn't have enough. We wanted the tutors, the teachers, to be much more the multimedia developers themselves, so that they weren't reliant all the time on a multimedia developer. The second one was the fact that this fed into the tool, that no matter how small we made these resources, tutors wanted to adapt them. So we wanted a tool which teachers could use to create these resources, which in turn could be adapted by local tutors. And finally, what was really interesting, as you can see, is some of these designs. What's interesting, more interesting very often than the content, is the design. So we wanted the design to be reusable. And I think I've probably got just about enough time for a quick demo, because it's easier to actually show the tool. The tool is free, can be downloaded. I'll show you where it can be downloaded from in a moment. It's called GLOWmaker, GLOWmaker 2. GLOW stands for Generative Learning Objects. Now, this has to be, unfortunately, very quick. But you can, for example, create a new project. You've got certain built-in designs. This one, EMI, I'll select, okay? And what you get is a sort of top-level plan, which teachers are used to. Say, like, introduce what the topic's about, set up a task, and working through. Now you might look at that and say, well, fine, that's okay, but I'd actually like to get my students to understand why. So you can alter it. You can drag this across and you simply link it up. Okay. So I'm not stuck with the default pattern and I just click Align Nodes. Okay, so I've got a pattern, but I immediately can modify it. When I've got the pattern, the key bit there is to click on this designer button. And what it will do is create a default set of screen layouts for all those pedagogical functions. And the one, since we're very short of time, I look at is this one, Access Views. So what we actually did here is actually take that design and build it into the tool. So anyone can build it. I don't have time here, but I'll show you just quickly. I'll start it just to show you how easy it is. There's two objects here. There's one here. And what you classically do in the tool is you click on it. There's always a little control panel down here. You just browse. And this is an image loader, so I just click there and it loads the image in. Okay, and I just work through like that. So I've got a pedagogically based template that I can add quite rich media to. And the media can be still pictures, video, animations, text. It's quite rich. Now there isn't time to go through all that, so what I thought I would do is just pull up which seems to have disappeared, so I'm going to have to pull it up again. Just a quick example of a glow which actually uses that. We've got, this one was for psychology, and it used that pattern. Okay, and I'll just skip through to the relevant bit. And the story here basically is, I go to here. The story is, there's this person in a cabin, and as he's stepping out the door, a raven caws. And he looks up and sees a cougar that's about to jump on him. And he says, oh, the bird cawed to warn me. And the psychologists say, well, that may not be so. So what we have got here are different interpretations. Why did the raven caw? And then it goes on to things like, what does this suggest about ravens and so on. So you click here, go to your first expert, and see what he has to say.
The raven may have cawed, as the man assumed, in order to alert him to the presence of the cougar so that he could escape.
Okay, I'll just repeat that again since the... okay.
The raven may have cawed, as the man assumed, in order to alert him to the presence of the cougar so that he could escape.
Okay, if you go to expert 2 says...
The raven may have cawed to alert the cougar to the presence of the human rather than the other way around. It may have done so that the cougar would kill the human and then the raven could feed on the carcass.
You can also, by the way, have transcripts quite easily. They just pop up like that. Okay, so that's an example of someone who's used the tool to build that. And in their case, they went for psychology. We've had it used for lots and lots of different things. So going back, so what we're trying to build here is an open access tool that empower tutors to develop quite rich multimedia learning objects. And those, when any learning object created this way can automatically be loaded back into the tool. It can be modified. So if you wanted to go back and you didn't want the Graduate Centre at London Met, you wanted a wonderful building in Kuwait, you can go back and change that quite easily. Okay, so we've got about a bit less than 10 minutes. So I originally thought I had a bit more time, so I'll try not to rush. Go back to slides. Okay. There's a website. I'll give the URL in a minute. From the website, you can download the tool. It's free. There's samples on it. There's also in the guides a set of animated guides to how to actually use the tool. There's also from the community tab here. Okay. In the community tab, it actually links through to a wiki. And the wiki, again, is the community of people developing it. We've had a very large number of people. It's been downloaded in about 90 different countries all over the world now. Okay. But again, it's free, it's open access, will continue to be free and open access. And that's the URL, which is just www.glowmaker.org. Okay. So we've got learning objects, we've got tools for creating learning objects, which can be used at the next level up. So you can pull them down, you can incorporate them in your classes. You can use them on the web directly, you can drop them down, put them in your laptop, use them in a lecture, or you can load them into your institutional virtual learning environment. They're very flexible. Okay. At the next level up, people tend to be focused there's a lot of interesting work on designs. So at this level, And you get, for example, big repositories of what are meant to be inspirational lesson plans supporting materials. This one is from the Australian Learning and Teaching Council. And it's very easy to use. I mean, you simply go in, you've got a standard search, you just put in your search options here, and then it comes back up with what is basically, two things strike you about this. One is it's a fairly detailed description of a lesson plan or a learning design. The second thing that strikes me is it's a bit dry. It's not very easy to get into. It's text-based. So there's a lot of learning designs, some of them really, really interesting, but I think also I'm interested in how do you make them a bit more attractive. And this is an interesting development. It's still a research project. This is meant to be a sort of way of collecting and creating these patterns, and it's being developed by Dana Lorilar and Dejan Ljubojevic. And what he basically does here is you just go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I say 1, I say I want something that's tutor supported. 2, I'll make it sort of class. 3, I'll make it technology enhanced learning. So you just go through and select. And what happens then is it comes up here with a selection of what the TLA stands for, teaching and learning activities. So you can actually select a series of activities. So I've got a tutor supported group in technology enhanced learning, and at the moment I've got it for 30 minutes. And then I can actually begin to drag in specific teaching and learning activities and build up a design. And it also gives you this little feedback here. And the feedback is telling you at the moment, for example, that this is about 40% of this is about investigation. So it actually tells you pedagogically what functions you're using. So if it isn't quite what you want, you can go back and change it and you get the feedback. So that's quite a sort of interesting development. There are other very well-known things at the session level. The LAMS system, for example, the Learning Activity Management System, developed by James DL in Australia, is very well known. And again, it produces executable designs. You can design it and actually run it online. Transforming a course, again, take just an illustrative example. First of all, what's really important is the staff development. And these shots are from a project called Viewpoints, which is at the University of Ulster. And as you can see, again, they're using a very intense staff development. But they've also got some interesting tools. They've got these big A4 acetate sheets. And they've got these cards, which have little pedagogical functions on them. So they're actually using a very old technology indeed, but it works very effectively. These groups work very well with it. The key bit, again, is getting people engaged and supporting them in this sort of powerful, agile development. At the tool level, again, this is a research tool at the moment. There's a tool called Learning Design Support Environment, and that aims to create a tool set really for pedagogical planning right at the course and session levels. And there's a whole team, it's a project of over £1 million, being led by Dana Lorilar at the Institute of Education in London. And I've got a couple of screen dumps from that. I think it's still a research prototype, so I think there's a lot to do at the usability level, but I'll try and get across what they're trying to do. First of all, they did a very systematic, here on the palette bit over here, they did a very systematic listing of just about every entity used in higher education. And what they've done here is created a drag and drop. So at this level, which is like a session, you drag and drop across and create your sessions. So they've dragged across here. They've got a supervised class to the side. It's going to be a seminar followed by a virtual lab. So they're trying to create a drag and drop thing, both for creating whole modules and then for going to individual sessions, individual lessons within those. And when you make your choices, you get this feedback. So it actually tells you, in terms of production for the students, practice, inquiry, what is the pedagogical richness, if you want, of what you've selected. So you could iterate. So there's some interesting ideas in that. But what I'd like to do is finish off, I think we've just got a couple of minutes, with some really exciting new contexts for learning. And at the Learning Technology Research Institute, we've got a group who are working a lot on augmented reality. And what they're interested in are sort of overlays. So you've got a virtual overlay on the real world. And here we've got some students who are actually doing a sort of field trip. And in that field trip, when they went along a certain street, the GPS would fire off. So when they got to